So I saw Ant-Man today, Ant-Man and the Wasp in Quantumania,
Yeah.
and I liked it. I liked it, but here I've spoiler-free review. By the way, I will not spoil anything about this film because it literally just came out. But here are my two takeaways, gripes, whatever you want to call them. So first, Modoc is in it. Who now I'm not a big comic book reader, but I understand Modoc is a fan favorite. Who
Is it the Patton Oswalt version from the sitcom series?
no, it is not, and I don't. To explain who Modoc is in Quantumania would be a big spoiler, so I'm not going to
Gotcha.
I'm not going to say who he is. But people are very excited to see a live action version of Modoc, and boy, did they miss that landing.
Oh boy.
Ugly. It just didn't register.
Jeez.
The actor's face just, it's like, now if they're not showing his face, then it looks fine when he's got like the metal like mask on.
Mhm.
Then he looks great. But then the second that mask comes off and you see the face, it's like someone went into MS Paint and they
Ew.
stretched out the image. Like from a couple of angles, it looks okay, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be fair, based on what I know of Modoc, and again, I've never seen him outside of cartoons and the original comic version, I can't really picture how you would do a good job turning that into a realistic human being.
right.
Because he's a very cartoonish figure.
Yeah, there's some things that look very good in animation, and in drawings that just really, like you said, it just doesn't translate when you're trying to make a live action
Right.
thing out of it. It's kind of
Or
like
you have to compromise and make it look a little bit more realistic.
taking Dragon Ball and turning that into a live action property.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to have someone playing Bulma, like a living human playing Bulma, like it's one thing to cosplay, but then when you're actually trying to make a live action film out of it, now granted it's Emmy Rossum, you can't go wrong with Emmy Rossum, but at the same time, like her version of Bulma is not, she's not Bulma, and this wasn't Modoc. It was just freakish looking abomination of a floating head.
Yeah.
So
Oof.
So that was my first gripe. And then my other gripe is, so we're obviously now, I think technically this is phase 5 of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic
Really?
Universe. Yeah, I guess Quantumania is the first film of phase 5.
Really? I didn't realize Phase 4 had ended. What was the finale for that one?
Oh God, what was the last film that came out in that? Was it
All I can
Thor?
remember is what the Doctor Strange one? Was that the last one?
I think it was Thor, Love and Thunder.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was one of those. So everything that has happened since Thanos, since Avengers Endgame, you've hit your peak. You've hit the top of
Right.
Everest. You can't, like, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly kind of feel bad. Like it's one of those situations where, from a purely artistic standpoint, they did it, right? They completed a massive, like 30 movie long franchise, interconnected, pretty much every single one of them considered a hit. Like, that's wild. Now wrap it up and have that be the finale and go home. But from a studio perspective, obviously you're not going to do that, right? Because you're thinking, well, we're now at our peak. Now is the time where we can get more people to come buy tickets and come see our movies. So you're kind of getting that at odds with each other, the good storytelling versus the we need to crank out more movies so we can make more money off of this franchise.
And there's obviously decades upon decades of comic books that you can reference,
Right.
and things that people have been clamoring for to see on the big screen, translated from comic into film. I'm, for me, I'm excited to see Secret Wars, because
Okay.
Secret Wars is going to be one of the Avengers films. Because they announced, all of like Phase 5, I think like Phase 6 too. Like we're going over the next 3 years, and there's 2 Avengers films that are coming out, and one of them is Secret Wars, which at the time was the Avengers, Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four. This would have been unheard of in 2012.
Right.
Because the Marvel Studios for the film rights, didn't own any of those properties beyond the Avengers.
Right.
But now they own everything. So now they can finally do Secret Wars. And I've been wanting this for well over a decade. And we're finally getting it. But I'm nervous because I feel like they've just run out of steam since Avengers Endgame. Now, the shows, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was very good.
Okay.
WandaVision was excellent.
Okay.
Loki, now I haven't seen all the series, but Loki, this is where I really kind of fell off here, because I watched all of Loki, but it felt like a chore.
Okay.
And this is what I don't like, is that in order to understand what's going on in the new Ant-Man and Quantumania, you would have had to have watched all of season 1 of Loki.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And to understand what was going on in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, you had to watch all of WandaVision.
Right.
And those are like 8 to 10 episodes, an hour long each?
Yeah. On one particular streaming service that you have to pay for.
Correct.
And yeah, I mean, that's sort of my perspective here. Now, we were talking about this before the show started. I have seen like the fewest Marvel movies of any human being alive, right? My wife and I, we've seen the Iron Mans and the Guardians of the Galaxies. I've never seen any of the Captain Americas, no Thors, no Avengers movies, none of the spinoffs, none of the TV series, none of it. And I'll be honest, the only one of those movies that I really enjoyed was the first Guardians of the Galaxy, which I knew I would, because seeing the trailer for it, I went, oh, this is not a superhero movie. And I'm going to like that. And then in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they fucking made it a superhero movie, and I was bored throughout the whole thing again. So, but like, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, so say Ant-Man Quantumania was phenomenal. And you told me, Ack, you have got to see this movie. It is the best movie I've ever seen in my life. You need to watch it. Okay, well, the prep work for me to get ready to watch that would literally take months of doing nothing but watching Marvel content to get up to a point where I can appreciate and understand Ant-Man Quantumania. And with each new phase, that problem just gets worse. You're just getting more and more of a ridiculous prerequisite required before every new viewing if you want to have the slightest idea what's going on.
It's tough. It's a chore. It's almost like running a marathon. It's like preparing for a marathon.
Yeah. And like part of me does kind of understand the appeal. And then another part of me is just like, oh God, fuck that. Like now when it comes to just comic properties, I was always slightly more into DC than Marvel.
Sure.
Not by much. I wasn't super into it, but I at least watched, like, mostly because of the cartoons. I loved Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and the Justice League series back on Cartoon Network. I enjoyed those as a kid. So I was always more familiar with the DC franchises than Marvel ones. Mm-hmm. With the recent announcements when, James Gunn just announced the next 3 years worth of DC movies, I'm watching this Twitter video, this like 2-minute video, as he explains every movie that they've got planned to come up. And I'm just thinking, this sounds awful. I don't want to do this. Why are you prepping me? Here are all of the things you're going to have to do to follow this story over the next several years. Why? Like, that just isn't something I have any interest in doing.
I'll tell you this, the trailer for The Flash, which is finally coming out, that looks cool. Like, I hate what's-his-face, Ezra Miller. I'm sorry, what's their face?
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, that dude can introduce himself to a flying brick.
Yeah.
But the film looks cool, and it's got Michael Keaton as Batman in it. They're
cool.
They're doing their own multiverse thing, so
Yeah.
I'll give that a chance. But yeah. Now James Gunn, obviously coming from Marvel, now he's in charge of all of DC's stuff. They're putting a lot of faith in him. I mean, now I can tell you, Suicide Squad, the Suicide Squad, the more recent one,
Yeah.
that was excellent.
Yeah, we watched the more recent Suicide Squad. That one was good, and it was very standalone. Like, you don't have to have seen anything else around it to appreciate it. Same with the new, what was this? The Batman? Was that what it was called? The
Yep.
Robert Pattinson.
Battinson. Yeah, what's interesting is that The Flash has Ben Affleck as Batman in it. Even though the Batman
in addition to Michael Keaton.
In addition to Michael Keaton. And then you have the Pattinson Batman, which is its own separate thing. See, this is DC now.
Yeah.
James Gunn's going in trying to clean up this little bit of a mess that they DC created for itself by trying to do its own Avengers Marvel style universe.
Right.
But yeah, you're right about the amount of prep work that needs to go in to understand what's happening in all of the Marvel films, all of the phases. It's one thing because leading up to Infinity War and Endgame, it was all films. You didn't have to watch any shows. There were a couple shows here and there, but they were just spin-offs and they didn't actually contribute.
You didn't need... Iron Fist contained no plot critical information to Avengers Endgame.
Right. Those are completely separate. Like the Defenders, it's in that universe, but nothing that the Defenders does, with the small exception of Daredevil and... Daredevil, that's all I'm going to say. Nothing that they do ties into the films that lead up to Infinity War. So that was just films, and it was just what, 2 a year, and then 2 to 3 a year. But now for what we have going on, here's the other side of my complaints. These are gripes I have. Is you have to watch all the shows. Okay, like I said, WandaVision, great, absolutely great. I loved WandaVision. It all leads up to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which was it was good. I liked it. It was a good movie, but it was not worth having to watch an entire series,
right,
to get to this point. It was whelming.
Yeah.
Here's the word again, cromulent.
Yeah.
It didn't need the build up that it had.
Yeah, exactly.
And sort of the same deal with Quantumania is that we didn't need the build up in Loki to get to this. And the new Captain America that's coming out, like, you would have had to have watched Falcon and Winter Soldier to understand why there's a new Captain America.
Right.
It's just not, it's so much. And I think even Disney and Marvel have realized now too that, hey, maybe we don't need to do these shows and put so many of these shows out. And they even, that it was because of the pandemic. We were locked
That's
into,
true. Yeah.
We couldn't go to the movies. So, stay home and watch your shows. But yeah, it just I don't think Ant-Man and Quantumania was worth the build up from Loki. And then even still, I really feel like they're struggling to figure out what they're doing with the whole franchise going forward after Thanos. The big thing that they're really pushing now is the multiverse.
Right. And that's just like headache inducing.
Yeah. Do you think that's too complex for the casual, like, Marvel movie fan?
Probably. And I also just I feel like the concept of a multiverse is almost feels like a cop out sometimes. Like, I'm gonna reference the bad show is a good example of this, but I feel like if you're going to do a multiverse, the best way to do it is like Rick and Morty, where the premise is acknowledged to sort of make everything meaningless.
Sure.
Like, because, oh no, Iron Man died. Let's just pop over and get one of the 10 trillion billion identical Iron Men from one of the other timelines. Okay, we're good now. We have a new one.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like the concept of a multiverse is too easily used for cop-outs that if you're going to go the multiverse route, I want it to be kind of like grim and bleak and bring into it that sense of, oh, nothing matters. And I just doubt that that's the direction that Marvel is going with it.
It's similar to what Doctor Strange says at the end of Infinity War when he's like, look, I've seen hundreds of different like possible endings to this, and there's only one where we all make it out alive. That's why I want to see it's like where every multiverse is like, I mean, Star Trek did this all the time where there was like another universe, but like everyone is dead or they're in the middle of some like war, that never ending war where people only know, living in squalor and, death is just over your shoulder at any given period of time.
Yep.
And the multiverse and time travel, those are crutches.
Yeah. I also want to say, and again, this is coming from someone who has not seen either movie, and just going purely off of the commercials, the fact that both Doctor Strange, the new Ant-Man, also even I think one of the newest Spider-Man one, all the trailers look like they take place in just like a swirling vortex of... do you know what I'm talking about? Like every poster, every trailer, every commercial are the characters standing in a purely CGI green screened background that's just like swirling vortex number 7.
That's exactly what it is. It's the camera, it's panned out, it's up, and it's just sort of that slow left to right as the world around them is like manipulating Inception style or exploding.
It's just one of those, okay, the first time I was like, oh, that looks like it'd be cool. And now I'm like, oh, is this just every Marvel movie now? They just all do that. They all take place in the vortex.
Yeah. The thing about Quantumania too is that it doesn't, yes, it introduces who the I guess the new main villain of the MCU is, and also introducing the multiverse and how this character, what impact this character has on the multiverse. But at the same time, nothing that actually happens in Quantumania, and again, no spoilers, nothing that happens in Quantumania does anything to move the like franchise forward. It's just like, it's another day in the life of Scott Lang in the Pims. Like, oh, yeah, you guys want to go hang out in the quantum realm for a little bit?
But we did that last week.
Yeah, there's just not it again. I liked it. I liked how they did it, but this was the film equivalent of this meeting could have been an email.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But that said, I mean, it was nice to see Janet Van Dyne get a lot of screen time. Michelle Pfeiffer. That's all I'll say about that.
Okay.
I liked her casting for Ant-Man and the Wasp. I feel like she wasn't in it for that long, and she got quite a bit of screen time in this one. And also Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang, who's now the third actress to portray this character. She a good job. I mean, not her delivery was kind of like very, very dry, but I think she held her own in that if she becomes like the next Ant, well, you can't call her Ant-Man, Ant person, Ant-Woman.
Maybe she'll have a couple nieces and nephews and just be aunt.
Thanks for listening, everyone. It's been great. So, Aquin, if you have the Disney Plus, and
You don't.
Okay, well then never mind. But and I love Ant-Man too. Ant-Man's one of my favorite.
I like Paul Rudd. He did this show on Netflix that I really liked, and I'm bummed out because it's one of those shows that's never technically been canceled, but it's been like 3 years and they've never renewed it either, so it probably is never coming back. Called Living with Yourself.
Okay.
And it stars Paul Rudd and Paul Rudd. as a guy who gets cloned, and the cloning process is supposed to kill off the original, but they fail to properly kill the original. So he wakes up in a shallow grave and goes home and finds a slightly better version of himself has taken over his life. And it's just like a really fun, really clever show that I enjoyed a lot. And so for that reason, I have a lot of admiration for Paul Rudd, because I'm pretty sure it was like his project. It's one of those like written, produced, directed, and starring Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
But
I love
yeah,
Paul Rudd.
I guess being Ant-Man is more important.
Well, Ant-Man, like when they announced that Paul Rudd was playing Ant-Man, that was like people were very skeptical at that announcement because like, he's a comedian. Everything that he's in is comedy. And
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, Edgar Wright was behind the first Ant-Man, and yeah, people were just very skeptical at his casting. And then that first Ant-Man movie ended up being phenomenal. And also that year, like 2014, 2015 was the turning point for the MCU films where we already had the first Avengers and they already did the serious stuff. And now they were going more lighthearted. And now you are also introducing the superheroes that nobody was familiar with.
Right.
People didn't know.
That's the Guardians of the Galaxy angle too.
Yeah.
That's yes, comic fans can go on and on about the deep, rich history and lore behind Rocket Raccoon, but to your average movie-going fan, LOL, funny little raccoon man. You know, like it's just meant to be like a goofy, weird choice for a mainstream, massive AAA movie.
And it worked out great for the advertising.
Yeah,
because of Groot.
Yeah, true.
Like, yeah, Groot. Like it's like what you're seeing right now with Star Wars and Grogu. Like everyone was obsessed with Baby Groot. It was taking those obscure characters that no one had ever heard of, and putting them into the limelight. And now, I didn't know who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. I thought Ant-Man was a joke.
Yeah,
and then I found out, I'm like, wow, there's a whole. This is a whole thing. And it turns out, and it ended up being my favorite. Ant-Man especially ended up becoming my favorite property out of the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, he was crucial to defeating Thanos by crawling up inside of his asshole and then turning back into full size.
Not even full size. He turns into Giant Man. Oh, that is the ending I wish we got. I know it was what everyone wanted, but that is what I wish we got. Not just turning into full size, but turning into Giant Man. See that colon stretch, baby.